Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Hitesh, for that elaborate introduction. Uh, it's a long journey of 35 years, so you tend to make some good things here and there, and then accumulate a few honors. But I want to tell you a few stories that once when I was in the school, or rather in my plus two, uh, I was witnessing. One of my brothers had an accident and he had blood coming out, and then we took him to the hospital. The doctor was attending to that blood, and he was doing the whatever was necessary. And I felt, looking at the blood, I felt giddy, and that was a decision. That was a day I decided that although I started my plus two with the intention of becoming a doctor, that is the day I decided that I am not going to be a doctor. Even today, when I see blood, it still is the same situation. So I still can't understand how doctors manage this, how they cut and sew it up. And, it is always a miracle for me that doctors are able to do it. So just to say that I started by thinking of becoming a doctor, but then when I realized that my destiny was somewhere else, I went into agriculture. And my going into agriculture was also partly because I was thinking that it will give me quick jobs. This was way back in '72, and agriculture graduates were able to get good jobs in banks quickly. So that was one of the reasons I went into agriculture. But coming, my story always used to take pride in saying that I'm a Dehati, and then for a Dehati to become the CEO of an American company, I used to say that it was a great achievement for me. But now that a Chaiwala has become the Prime Minister, my story has lost a bit of its zing, right? So which actually shows that if you can work for something, and if you have an objective to do something, then you can achieve it, irrespective of your background. I think that's a great lesson that one can learn today from the situation. And I am now different that I worked my way up from a village level, having studied in Telugu medium till my plus two. So it is not easy that when I got into IIM Ahmedabad, it was actually a miracle for me. And passing CAT, even though it was in '78 that I gave CAT, sorry, '76 I gave CAT, and walked into the interview. When in the interview they asked me, and I had really no clue about MBA. I just applied and got into that. And when they asked me, the interviewer asked me, Professor, he asked me, what is a manager's job? Right? So, and I was just fresh out of a village college, and then I was trying to figure out what is a manager's job. I said, the manager has to take decisions. So he smiled, and then he said, a bus driver also has to take decisions. So what is the difference between a bus driver and a manager? So I was really lost. I didn't know what to say. And then I think I mumbled something. I said that the bus driver only has the safety of the passengers in his mind while reaching the destination, but the manager has to take into account various factors while taking his decisions and guiding this company. Something like that I said. So probably it was nearer to the right answer, so they selected me. So I went into IIM Ahmedabad. In agriculture, I had done well on the academic front. So I went to IIM Ahmedabad as a gold medalist from my university in agriculture. And in IIM Ahmedabad, there were 150 students in my batch. After the first term exam was over, I was ranked 140. So I felt like, where have I come and what am I doing here? So it's a place where it is a ego-shattering experience that you go there as a gold medalist from your university, but you are ranked 140 out of 150 people after the first exam, and so that's from where you have to rebuild your career or your life or your confidence, and that's where it all started. And it was not an easy task because you are sitting in a class of 50 people. We had three sections. Each section had 50 people. Out of 50, 40 were engineers, and out of that 30 were from IITs, right? So when they talk, the language is very different. And coming from an agriculture background, I went into biological sciences because my maths was poor. That was one of the reasons. And to look at all these IIT people talking, it was really a great leveler in the sense that I had to come down to the earth after all my previous experiences. So this is the background from which I came. I came from a very ordinary family. It was not easy for my father to fund my IIM education, so I took loans for my education. So it is in that kind of background that I went through IIM. And after finishing all the courses, when the placement time came, I was in for a big shock because again an ego-shattering experience that we were four of us with agriculture background in my class. NOSIL came to recruit. They needed three people with agriculture background. So I almost took it for granted that I'll be selected. And NOSIL was a blue chip company. Everybody wanted to get into NOSIL. And at the end of the interview process, they selected the other three and did not select me. So I was really, maybe that is the time I cried, really. Because in placement time, it's very stressful. And I think some of you who are have undergone it or who are likely to undergo it will know this. The placement time is very stressful because you are competing with others and there are a few opportunities that are coming, so it is not easy. And then so I did get that job, and so I kept trying. I got some other job, and then I worked. I always wanted to get into HEXT, and that was my dream job. And after 1 year, I applied to an advertisement they released, then got selected in HEXT, which was a big dream come true for me. It is also a place where I met my wife. We both were working in HEXT, and so it was in a way 13 years in HEXT gave me a big boost to my career, and which laid the foundation. And here I want to say that before I went into the placement, I realized that going through all the IIM courses, I realized that maths or accounts or production, these are all not my areas of expertise. My area of expertise or my area of strength, I realized, was common sense. And common sense, in my opinion, is the crux of management, because there are very few rules in management. Even if you talk to professors in management, they will tell you that it depends. It depends is a very important sentence people use, because there are no right answers or wrong answers. We used to have open book exams in IIM, and in an open book exam, you really don't open your book, because if you open your book also, it is of no use, because you have to think. And that's why the classroom discussions are so important in MBA programs. It is a classroom discussion which brings out various aspects of looking at a problem and solving a problem, because different people look at problems differently and they will solve problems in different manners. There is nothing like the right way and the wrong way. I mean, you should not make very fundamental mistakes, but beyond that, there is nothing like a wrong way and right way. You can manage any situation with the different approaches. So that is where I realized that my strength is my common sense. So I decided, and only two subjects appeal to me. One is marketing, which I think is quite a lot of common sense, and second is strategy, which also I believe is quite a lot of common sense. So I actually took interest in these two subjects right from the beginning, and that is where, if you see my career, it has been built on these two. It is basically marketing and strategy. I do like HR. as a subject because I believe that in an organization, HR is not the responsibility of only HR department, it is the responsibility of every manager. Every person who manages people is a HR manager, right? So he has to really make sure that he is following the principles of man management or human resource management as far as his department is concerned. And so this is where actually I started off. And so I should tell you that when I joined Dext, I had my first boss. I was expecting that he will be here today, but his flight is coming later, so he can't join. His name is Mr. Unni, and some of my first lessons in management I learned from him. And one of the first things I learned is that how do you create extraordinary performances from ordinary people? You know, this is a big task of team leaders. Many of you who are MBAs, when you enter real life, corporate life, some of you may become team managers immediately, some of you may become after a few years. But the real test for your skills as a leadership skill is that how do you get the best out of your team? And how do you inspire people to perform? This inspirational leadership is something which I learned from him. And I do believe that if you are a manager, you should be able to inspire your people. Now, in what proportion? I mean, he is a great motivator, and motivating your team and inspiring your team to be actually making them perform extraordinary feats. You know, we all have seen this happening in cricket field or hockey field, or we call Dhoni as the best captain because he's able to get the best out of his people. So there are various leadership skills you will use. You will stand to demonstrate your skills in a difficult situation. You will go and do certain things. But if you know about Mike Brierley, who was the captain of England at one point of time, he was a very ordinary batsman. In fact, by himself, he would never get into a test team as a batsman. But he was considered to be one of the greatest captains because he was able to motivate his people to produce outstanding results. This is something which I realized and I learned during this period in Dext. And another thing I learned was that you have to aim high. You know, aiming is a very important part of management. How do you set your goals? And I realized that if you set your goals to get a first class, you might end up getting second class. If you set your goal to get 90%, you might end up getting 80%. So, if you set your goal to get 100%, you might get 90%, 95%. So, it's a matter of where you pitch, and your pitching will decide how much of mental energy you will use and how you actually really go for it. And a lot of times, people who don't aim high will never achieve high things, right? It is not easy for a chief minister to aim to be the prime minister, right? But if you don't aim, you will never achieve. If you aim, there are good chances that you will achieve. So, aiming high is one of the things I have learned from him, and it was like unbelievable things you can aim for, right? And that is what we have been able to do during that period. So it is also like I always say that 13 years I spent there led my career into a direction in which I could become a divisional director in Cyanomet, an American company, and I moved from a German company to an American company, which in itself was a great education. You know how German companies are managed and how American companies are managed. The European companies in general, I found that laid a lot of emphasis on long-term management of human resources, while the American companies have much greater focus on short-term results from the teams. So there is a big difference in the way you deal with the teams. There is a big difference in the way you actually manage your teams to get results. This is called PMS. The performance management systems in these companies were very different. And I had a boss, again, a very great boss I had in Dynamite called Mr. Arora. Very different management style I learned from. And these two were very contrasting styles I had between these two. One is an inspirational leader who could motivate people to achieve extraordinary things, and he was really, I must tell you that one of the things I learned from him also, I'm talking of Uni, the previous one, is about punctuality. The Germans are generally very particular about punctuality, and he was implementing it. And once I still remember when I reached 5 minutes late for a meeting, how he gave me a dressing down in front of so many people. And even now, when there is a time for a meeting, even now, if he comes, whether it is dinner or whether it is a meeting, he will always come 5 minutes before and wait outside, so that exactly at the time we will enter. So these are a few things you learn, because we take punctuality for granted. I mean, among Indians, we don't care so much on that aspect. But if you are going to work for some of the big companies, and if you want to work for companies which value punctuality, it becomes a very important way to show how disciplined you are in your approach. So between him and Mr. Arora, there is a big difference. Mr. Arora was a very different kind of a manager who managed processes. It is a very highly process-driven organization and very highly result-oriented in terms of the short-term results. So my objective or my way or my style I have tried to build over a period of time, that I wanted to make a combination of these two. So I believe that I have worked on that to produce a style, my own management style, which had a combination of trying to inspire my team, but at the same time have processes which deliver the results. So it's not an easy balance, and I think this is something where many managers try to do, but it's not easy to do. You end up being either too people-oriented or you end up being too autocratic. And so you have to strike that balance between the two. And an autocratic leader can produce short-term results, but it is certainly not a long-term solution. While a people-oriented leader might produce results in the long term, but in the long term, like a famous saying, in the long term, all of us are dead, right? So you can't wait for a very long term. So you have to produce results at least in the medium term if you are to be a good manager. So result orientation is an extraordinary and extremely important aspect on which we have to recognize that commercial organizations will work on this much more. So during all this process, I have been involved with some of the associations. I think we talked about that. And one of when I became the managing director of Cyanamide, this was in 1998, I was one of the youngest CEOs in Bombay. You can say that at 42 years I became the managing director. So that is definitely one of the big milestones in my career. And one of the jobs I had, and I was there in that job for a couple of years before I moved into the seed industry. I must tell you this, that one of the jobs I had during that 2-year period was we had one manufacturing facility in Atul. So I had direction from my headquarters that you sell that manufacturing facility to our local partner. We had a local partner, you might have heard the name Mr. Lalbhai. So Sunil Lalbhai he was our local partner. So I had to sell this facility to him. And I was a greenhorn. I just took over as the CEO, and then I was given this task by the headquarters. It is not easy, and because we had 350 workers, there was a strong union, and you have to manage to sell it and also sign a supply contract. So it was a two-way process, and it took me almost a year to negotiate the deal. And in the end, we had to use a lot of persuasive skills convince the workers, because it's important that the workers agree for the transfer, because their employment will be transferred. So I realized that when I did that, and later on in life I did that a few more times. And when you have to execute such difficult tasks, you have to take a bit philosophically. Like, you are supposed to do certain things as a part of your job. You can't avoid doing difficult things. But when you do such things, you do it with a human face. Now, it is important that you do such difficult things with human face, because commercial interests are important, but at the same time, you should not punish people who have been working for 25-30 years with an organization. So this was the situation, this was the dilemma I faced. So what we did was that we made the deal a bit sweet for the workers. But more than that, I was worried that all the workers will get some money into their hands, and then they will blow it away, and then they will be left with no savings. So what I did was that I called a financial advisory person, 2-3 people, made them sit in the plant, and I insisted that each worker comes with his wife. And then both of them sit there, and the financial advisor gives them the advice on how to invest that money in such a way that the man doesn't waste it away, and the wife finally becomes on the streets. So this is something which we did, and this and we did this, like I said, closing facilities and reducing people, restructuring organizations is a harsh and hard reality. Many times we have to do that, and I did this during Advanta time. We did this in Australia, we did this in US, so in other countries also we were able to do this. But every time I followed this principle that you should not neglect the interests of people who serve the organization for long periods of time, and do it with a human face. So that is something, again, I would say that is an important learning for me during this whole course. Then I moved into the seed industry, and my romance with the seed industry started in Aurangabad and Jalna. This is the place where it all started, and I have spent around 14 years in the seed industry. Seed is something which is, and I realized this after I came to seed industry, that seed is something which has the genetic potential to increase yields, right? And I want to show you a few slides on that. That yield increases, how critical are they for the country and for our population? Because food is something on which this country, like China, two of the largest populous countries, will have to ensure their food security. This is as important as national security. It is as important as protecting our borders. Protecting our food security is, and I say this many times when I sit with government officials or in the policy making bodies, when we have these discussions, I really don't understand how food security can be anything less than protecting our borders. Because if food security collapses in the country, we will have a serious problem in the country. We were 30 crore people when we got independence. We were producing 60 million tons of food grains. Today we are 120 crore people or 125 crore people. We produced last year 260 million tons of food grains. Our population has quadrupled, and our food grain production also has quadrupled, slightly more than quadrupled. It was not. This is the turning point came with Green Revolution in the late 60s. At that time when we had Green Revolution, we used to import wheat from US every year. The ships under PL 480, what was called as PL 480, used to come. And till the ship came, we didn't have enough wheat stocks in the country. That was the situation. I have seen physically my own father, who was a revenue deputy collector. He used to approve. This was in 64, 65. People used to come that I have a marriage in my family, I need 5 kilos of sugar to make sweets. And he used to say, please manage with 1 kilo. And he used to approve only 1 kilo sugar. I have seen those kind of situations. Many of you, youngsters I'm talking about, don't really understand or visualize what was the situation before Green Revolution. So today, children think that food grows in the supermarkets because they just go into the supermarket and buy the food, right? They really don't understand what the farmer goes through to produce food. So I have understood that through all my experience that the importance of food production. And I will come back to that a little bit later. But from in the seed industry, I started with Amazon Genetics, then I became Advanta, like Ritesh mentioned. I was leading a global team of around 12 team members reporting to me from different parts of the world. And it was for me again a very new experience. You know, every shift I made in my job gave me added value or a new experience. And this is where I also advise people who come to me for advice on job changes that don't change jobs for the sake of a few rupees or for the sake of the promotion. You must see the new job, what is the value it is offering you, additional value. So if you see each of my job shifts, I shifted only when there was a job adding value to my work. And if you see from Hex to Cyanamide, I became the divisional director, so completely different responsibilities. In Cyanamide, I became the managing director, which was a completely general management experience I had for the first time. Then I moved into the seed industry because seed industry in the year 2000, around that time, was the sunrise industry. It is still the sunrise industry because biotechnology is changing the face of seed industry. Biotechnology is changing the way we do agriculture. So I felt that this is the time to get into a sunrise area like that. And so if I compare myself with people who remained in the pesticide industry, I believe that I have experienced both sides, which is a greater value experience because the value kept shifting from pesticides into seeds. So as somebody who worked on both sides, I was able to understand the value dynamics much better. So this, and again, Advanta gave me an opportunity to go into the global markets. So for me, it was the first time I had an Argentinian research head, I had an Australian supply chain head, and I had an American doing the quality for me. So it was like, and I had a few Indians. So managing people from different cultural backgrounds and people sitting in different parts of the world is a completely new experience. And with that, we have built the business. When I started, it was hardly 400 crores business, and when I left, it was 1250 crores. So it's a great experience. We have done 8 acquisitions during that period. So for me, if I have to say another great learning I had or another important experience I had was in M&A. That's where the strategy came into picture. That till I became the managing director, I was driven more by marketing as my key function. But later it was general management. But in general management also, I became an expert in M&A because I did about 10 deals totally. Out of that 8 where I acquired companies and 2 where I sold companies. And these were across the globe. I had done deals in Australia, in US, in India, and various places. So M&A is a very different ball game altogether. You know, how do you assess the needs? How do you assess the gaps? How do you identify a target? How do you negotiate the deal? And how do you actually structure the deal in such a way that it is useful? And finally, how do you do the most important part of any M&A is how do you integrate the post-acquisition integration is the most important part of an M&A. You know that 60% of M&A deals fail because after the acquisition, the value gets destroyed because of human errors or lack of coordination or lack of cohesive working between people. So if you have to capture value, unfortunately, among the 8 acquisitions I made, none of them failed. And I think the reason or the credit for that must go to, of course, the whole team which worked with me. But the credit must go to the way we have been able to manage the post-acquisition integration. That is the most important part of an acquisition. And So this is the kind of experience I had. So at the end of it, I want to come back to what I have learned in this whole process and what of course, like Ritesh said, I have done a lot of other things. Like I have been involved with policy level discussions as head of various associations. As a member of the Swaminathan Task Force, which formulated the biotech policy for the country, I was involved in various policy level discussions. So it gave me a great opportunity to interact with people at very high levels. Even at the global level, I met many ministers, prime ministers, presidents. So it was a great experience for me to go through this whole journey for this that phase. But I must tell you something, that the first 20 years of my work, I didn't make any money. At the end of first 20 years of my work, my bank balance was not even 1 lakh rupees. Okay? I made all the money in the last 10 years. But I would not have made the money in the last 10 years if I didn't have the first 20 years experience. Because it is an experience which taught me how to manage various things later. So if you jump for money purposes early in the career, you will not accumulate any experience and knowledge. And this is a fact I realized, that you must have a solid experience of 10 to 15 years in one place where you learn the basics, where you learn how to do basic function. It could be marketing, it could be production, it could be finance, whatever it is. But if you don't learn the basics in the hard way and at one place without jumping around, you will never make progress in career, because then you will keep jumping always. So money is less important at the beginning of the career, and I know that today's MBAs always look for money. There is a lot of premium on how much salary you get immediately after MBA. But since there are a lot of students here, I want to say this, that please pay more attention to what kind of work you will do. And in defining work, when we were joining jobs, was very different. We used to define work as how many people you will control, what will be the size of your team. Today that is not the consideration. Today's consideration is what technology will you handle when you start working. That has become more important, because today we are in a technology-led world, technology-led environment. If you don't go into the right technological space, you will not make progress in careers. So it's very important that, and I can tell you that when I started working, Mr. Menon, who is here, also remembers, he was our technical director at that time. My first job was to go to Punjab and launch a new herbicide. We were launching a new herbicide called Alelon. And I went to Punjab. This was in 1980. I had no clue. I didn't know Hindi. I didn't know Punjabi. Okay, I'm from South. I could only speak English and my mother tongue. And there was a big team which was put together to launch this new product. So they said, since you don't know English and you don't know Hindi and Punjabi, you can't speak to the farmers. So you are in charge of demonstrations. So I was made in charge of demonstrations. So I used to physically, I used to have a sprayer on my back and actually spray the fields. I sprayed, must be 60, 70 fields like that, just to demonstrate the product. Because how to spray was also something we were trying to demonstrate to the farmers. And I really don't know how many IIM Ahmedabad graduates today will do that, right? Because this is the way we learn the work. And you have to learn work the hard way. Work doesn't come in an easy air-conditioned room, unless you are in IT industry, right? So which is what today there is a big opportunity for them. But just to say that this is where I have done this, and I have realized that, and I kept up that my original strengths as the core points of my personality or core points of my work, which is common sense. And so I got labeled, or I got branded as somebody who is very analytical and a strong and solid person in the organization, a very dependable person. I think this this issue of dependability and trustworthiness is a very important aspect of my career. And this is what I realized during the course of my career, that if you don't inspire that confidence and trust in the employer, then it is very difficult. And I am seen as a very hardworking person, and my boss, first boss, still calls me the think tank. He says that I provide more thinking power to the team than the physical. I'm not a great salesman, okay? And this I realized right in the beginning, that I'm not a great salesman. I cannot go and sell, ice creams to Eskimos. So, but I can tell the sales guy how to go and sell, right? So I can provide the brain power behind the sales guy. That's how I became a marketing manager. Then I went into marketing and strategy. So I want to come back and talk about agriculture, because this is where I said that I want to give you a few slides also on this. Because my belief is that every job, and this is something which we all must realize and understand, is that it is important to have a higher purpose for a job, a higher purpose for a career. Now, you know how the food is produced in the country. Today we are actually, if you see here, there is demand for food is going up, and I will tell you why. Although I started in agriculture by accident, but I started loving this field by the time I was 10-15 years into this field. And today I swear by agriculture, and when I meet people who are going for agriculture careers, I really feel very happy. And I tell them how happy I am that somebody has chosen agriculture as a career. Because I do believe that agriculture needs better managers. Agriculture as a field needs better managers. And so that's where, because the demand for food is going up because of population increase, availability of land is coming down for various reasons, including urbanization. So the only answer is that yields have to go up. And yields cannot go up unless you have a better genetic potential in the seed. So this is where the seed industry came into picture. Preservation of yield is something which is done by the other industries like pesticides and fertilizers. So together they were giving the yield improvements. The technology has come in, which is the biotechnology, and it has given traits which preserve yield, and it has also given traits which have characteristics of outputs. Like many people want healthy food, right, today. So when you want healthy food, you have to produce grain which is healthier than what it was before. So this is where biotechnology helps. So increasing income levels and growing awareness levels has increased the demand for food with different characteristics. So this is where actually the whole industry works. Just to put it in perspective, I want to say that if you see today in India, we have around 0.15 hectares availability of land per head in the country. You see China has 0.4, Europe has 0.46, USA has 1.32. And if we increase our population to 170 crores, which is likely by 2035 or 2050, in fact 2050 we are talking of 180 crores. 150 crores we will cross by 2030. Our availability of land will come down to 0.1. So how are you going to produce the food that is required for so many people on this tiny piece of land which we have got for each person? If you see last 10 years, the food inflation is the biggest inflation, which contributed to the entire, and I want all of you to know this, not that you are in agriculture field, but you are in the field of food, because you all consume food. As consumers of food, we must be aware that what happens in the country with food. You can see here that all commodities, while they have grown by 22%, in the first, there is UPA 1 and there is UPA 2. All commodities grew by 22%. Food grains grew by 53%. Prices. And here we had 36% all commodities, 57% by food articles, and 38% by food grains. So you can see that it is not something which is because there is any shortage or anything like that. It is because the demand is going much beyond the supply situation. And the population is growing. We are adding more than 2 crore people every year to our population. Right? And now we are multiplying in geometric progression. So it's a very serious issue because I was looking at some statistics published by the World Bank that by the turn of the century, we are going to have 280 crore people in the country by the turn of this century. So how are you going to feed so much of population? And it is a very serious issue about which all of us must think, because it is not something which is somebody else's problem. It is our own problem. Demand for food. So there are various publications on this. Food demand is likely to go up to 220 million tons in 2020 from 172 million tons in 2010. Feed is going up because we all have started eating more non-vegetarian. The animal feed business or demand is shooting up in a big way. The poultry feed and animal feed. Fiber. We used to produce 134 lakh bales of cotton in 2002. Today we produce, this year's estimate is 400 lakh bales, which means we have multiplied our cotton production by 3 times. We are the second largest exporter of cotton in the world. But still, whether we will be able to match this, today's production is this much, we may cut exports to feed the growing demand for textiles. But is that what we want to do? Our share in the global agricultural commodity trade is less than 1%. So we are hardly there in the agricultural trade. We are likely to touch 150 crores by 2030. Our food grain production is alright. So if you see, there are studies which have been just published by Ahmedabad, which shows that the consumption of cereals from 35% of our total consumption has come down to 22%. So we are going to consume less and less of cereals, which is rice and wheat. And we are going to consume more of pulses, oil seeds, meat, milk. These are the products which are increasing in demand in a big way. So every 1 kilo of meat, for all of you meat eaters, let me tell you that every 1 kilo of meat production needs 5 kilos of grain. Right? When meat demand goes up, it multiplies the grain demand by 5 times. Right? So many of us are not aware of that. So just see this, cereals are going to, by 2030, we are okay. We have, because the cereals demand is not growing. But pulses, you see, we are going to be short by 15 million tons. Today, we are short by only 4 million tons. And the price of arahar has gone to 80 rupees per kilo. Or I don't know whether it is more now. Right? I still remember buying it at 8 rupees per kilo maybe 10 years back. It is already at 80 rupees per kilo. Pulses, for your information, are consumed mostly in India and the subcontinent, not outside much. I went to many farms in Australia where they were growing chana dal, and I asked them, why do you need this? They all told me it is for export in India. Right? So when this shortfall comes to 15 million tons here, who will supply it to us? No country will grow pulses, so much pulses for us, 4 times more than today's import. So we have to really think seriously, how are we going to meet this challenge? This shows, again, another study by IFPRI shows how, milk and eggs, just milk you can see. Milk prices, if you see in the last 10 years, how much they have increased. And meat and eggs is going to, from 11 million tons in 2007, it is going to 30 million tons in 2020. This is where I said that it will have a multiplication of 5 times on the grain demand. Some people tell me that we should not use chemicals, we should not use GM technology, we should do only organic cultivation. I am not against organic cultivation, but I just want to show you some prices. These are the prices of normal, these are the prices of organic. Okay. Now I want to ask you, how many people in the country can afford to buy Moong green at 270 rupees, Rajma at 254 rupees, Kabuli chana at 130 rupees. So the issue is not about producing without chemicals. You can always produce without chemicals or without GM technology. But can you feed the population of 150 crores with this? What India needs is not only just volume of production. We need volume of production at affordable prices. If you produce food which can be afforded by only 10% of the population, what will happen to 90% of the population? So this is the real issue for India. The volume, the cost of production, and the quality of production. Quality of production is also important, that what kind of quality we are producing. So these were actually, the GM technology comes into picture, and I'm the chairman of the GM Biotechnology Association. But I just want to tell you, not because I'm the chairman of that, but I just want to tell you that this is a technology which has a role to play, because we have, if you see here, water use efficiency, which can produce crops with less water, nitrogen use efficiency, which can reduce the consumption of nitrogenous fertilizers, salt tolerance, we have 20 million hectares of saline soils in the country, we can produce in that, yield improvement. These are all traits which are available for introduction in the country. We have 100 million hectares, 25 crore acres of land in India is dependent on rain. It has no irrigation facility. So if you have a technology which will help the farmers to grow better food there, it will make a big difference to the future of food in the country. Similarly, here output traits, we talked about healthy food. There are output traits which are available which can make food healthier. So these are all the opportunities, and if you see, this is the success story of cotton, where we have increased production from 13 million tons to this year 400 million tons, grains, and we have become the second largest exporter of cotton in the world, and 50,000 crores worth of additional revenue has been generated for the farm, additional profits are generated for the farmers, 60 lakh farmers use the technology today. This is the fastest technology adoption outside mobile technology. So this is a great boon which has been given to the farmers of cotton. So I'm just trying to say that these are all the things, the challenges of agriculture as a field is what actually fascinated me. And these are the one which actually made me think that I'm in the job or I'm in the profession of producing or helping the farmer to produce enough food for our population. This is where I say that your job or your profession should have an ulterior objective. It should have a higher objective than just earning money. Are you in the business of doing something by which the country and the society finally gets benefited, or some of the critical needs are met from your work? Then every day you go into the work, you go into the office, you feel proud that you are doing something which will actually help the country, which will actually help the farmers, which will help you and me. What is the use of producing more food? It is not just that the farmer is getting benefited, but all of us will get benefited, because with higher production, the prices will be kept under check. Otherwise, when the food prices go very high, you and I are the people who will have to pay for that, not the farmer. I mean, farmer also will pay for it, but he is growing food so he can eat his own production. But you and I are the people who have to go and buy it in the market. So I think there is a lot. So I always felt that the difficulties of the farmer I have seen. I traveled extensively into various villages in the country. I have seen farmers outside the country, and I have seen how tough it is, a farmer's life, how hard he works. And in comparison, our work is very, very comfortable. We sit in air-conditioned rooms and work. But he is toiling under the sun, hot day or wet day, he cannot sit at home. So it is a very different world for the farmer. So that is what made me actually believe that this is a field which gave me a lot of satisfaction. Even one of my friends tells me he works in a tobacco research station. And he told me that I work on tobacco, but I don't believe in tobacco. I said, if you don't believe in tobacco, you should not work on tobacco. Because if you don't believe in what you are doing, if you don't believe that what you are doing is good for the people and good for the country, then it is very difficult to produce the best results in that. You might produce results just for the sake of your own livelihood. But if you have to produce results which are good for the country and good for the people, you must believe that what you are doing is good for the country. Then you will be able to produce better quality results. So that is where I feel that all of you who get into jobs should also think, or you get into an entrepreneurship. Some of you might go and start something on your own, which I believe is actually what you should be looking at. Because I think looking for jobs is not something which is the only thing you should look at. I think some of you should look at doing something on your own, because I think that is where actually the country's future lies. We need more enterprising people in the country. We need more entrepreneurs in the country, and you have to take some risks in life. Because I was never an entrepreneur, so I can't really. I always go by this story that Gandhiji, once some lady came and told him that my son eats too much of sugar, so why don't you tell him that he should give up eating sugar? Sugar or whatever, that item doesn't matter, but the principle is that. So he said that come after 1 week, I will tell. So she asked why you need 1 week. He said first I should stop eating sugar, then only I will tell somebody to stop eating sugar. Right? So I was not an entrepreneur, so I can't recommend in that same sense. But I feel that if I had to start my life again, maybe I would be an entrepreneur, because I think that's what the country needs. The country needs more enterprises, more entrepreneurship, and I am sure now that we have a Gujarati Prime Minister, there will be more and more entrepreneurship development in the country, and it is really required to take it forward. And those are a few things which I want to leave behind. So some of the learnings of my life, of my career, I want to leave behind with you. One is that make the best use of opportunities. Anything that is in your hand, you must do it well. It is not like you are always looking at something else and then ignoring what is on your hand. Make the best use of opportunities that you have. Your performance on the opportunities available in your hand will make you eligible for better opportunities. Right? So that is a very important part of learning. Second is, hardworking, honest, trustworthy people have a market always. Don't think that the world is full of crooks, so I also have to be a crook. That is a very wrong approach to life. And it is my personal experience that hardworking, honest, trustworthy, and that's what I am. And I have a good market. I had a good market, so I believe that I can confidently say that there is a good market for such people. Teamwork is more important than individual work. Many of us feel that, and it comes out of our education system, because in our education system we promote more of individual brilliance rather than teamwork and project works. So, somebody was telling me the other day that he got transferred to Dubai, some international school, and the child, the daughter, he took there. So the first day she was asked to, there are no individual seats, there are only tables around which 5 people sit, and then they have to learn together. It's a very different type of education system. While we reward people who come first, who get, it's like as ridiculous as Delhi University giving 100% as the cutoff, for admissions. There is nothing more ridiculous than that, right? So it is like that. Our emphasis is more on individual brilliance, not on teamwork. And even I have seen this in international companies. When two Indians come together, they will fight, and they will not work together. This is our character. This is our character which comes out of our own education system and our own upbringing. That we are so competitive that we don't work together. So teamwork is more important than individual brilliance. And of course, your boss also should believe in that. Then only you will succeed if you follow the policy. You have to take calculated risks and accept challenges. If you don't take risks, your returns will be always low. And experienced businessman will tell you that higher the risk you take, higher the returns. Lower the risk you take, lower the returns. Obviously, but with higher risk, you are always running some risks. So you have to manage. You must have risk mitigation strategies to play safe. Difficult decisions have to be taken in life and in career, but with a human face. I mentioned some examples to you. Aim high always, don't aim low. You should aim, but aiming high by itself is not enough. You have to work for it after that. Right? You should aim high and work towards it. And having a higher purpose in your profession. I think these are all important learnings of my life, of my career, and I am sure some of them is easy. Some of them are easy for you to understand today. Some of them will become easier as you work more and more. And I think by the time you finish your career, I am sure you will adopt most of them and then make success of your careers. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.